Well, hey everyone. I'm sure most of you recognize that artist, but if you don't, that is Billy Joel with the two songs, Only the Good Die Young and The River of Dreams. Two fantastic songs. So let's take a deeper look here at the lyrics that we got. So, Only the Good Die Young. So the common interpretation of this song is that it's talking about losing your virginity. And so that's what he's singing. He's singing to Virginia. And of course, we can look at it that way. However, going deeper, we see he's actually sort of criticizing and contrasting the religious indoctrination. You know, leaving that sort of surface level interpretation for those who need to see it that way. But we can find a deeper meaning within that, because truly, only the good die young. And this isn't about losing one's virginity sexually necessarily, but about that death and resurrection, the death and rebirth, to let the identity of society and our straw man name that we've been given, the corporation that's been established based on our persona, we let that die so that we can be reborn and step into and truly live, get out of the death reality. So, come out, Virginia, don't let me wait. You Catholic girls start much too late. Better, but sooner or later it comes down to fate. I might as well be the one. So we could look at this from the perspective of the Christ singing to those still in the religious indoctrination to bring the true teachings of Christ back to the forefront. So I might as well be the one and only, that Christed essence that lives and reigns within all of us if we let it. Well, they showed you a statue, told you to pray, they built you a temple and locked you away, but they never told you the price that you pay for things that you might have done. So one of the biggest spells of religion is always, and with any sort of construct that designed for control, it's always built on some idea of a future or manipulating some idea of the past. So they built you a temple, locked you away. They never told you the price that you pay for things that you might have done. Might have. You know, like the keeping us in this idea that, you know, we've got to save up and that we're just worthless sinners, so we better grovel so that we can make it into heaven. And heaven is this distant place. It's some future state that it's just almost there. It's right around the corner, but we're not there yet. So you better just suck it up in this shitty version of reality. And that's exact opposite of what Christ taught. Heaven is here now. We just can't see it sometimes. And so it's changing that frequency, changing that state within so that we can. So the chorus, only the good die young, you know, as I said, this death and rebirth process. So we're here to die. We're here to let that self die. And it's not just a one and done thing. It's a continuous process. You know, every time we grow and become attached to the identity, then it must die in order for us to be truly free. You might have heard, I run with a dangerous crowd. So contrasting to the church, and of course they viewed Christ as a very dangerous man, attempted to kill him as a terrorist because he stood in direct opposition to the religious institutions. So from societal perspective, especially from the religious perspective, it's a very dangerous crowd. Those who truly follow the Christed teachings. We ain't too pretty, we ain't too proud, so we're not too worried about appearances. We're not prideful. Pride only comes when you're attached to your identity, your persona, your ego. We might be laughing a bit too loud, because it is, yeah, but that never hurt no one. So come on, Virginia, show me a sign. Send up a signal, I'll throw you the line. Ask and ye shall receive, seek and ye shall find. We have to signal to the Christ and invite the Christ in by surrendering. Send up a signal, I'll throw you the line. That silver cord, the stained glass curtain you're hiding behind, never lets in the sun. S-U-N-S-O-N. So while on paper, religion might talk about, Christianity might talk about Christ or Jesus, Yeshua's teachings, but really it's all designed to obfuscate it. The stained glass curtain you're hiding behind never lets in the sun, S-O-N, never lets in the Christ. And even going deeper into stained glass, so just a fun fact, those often these giant churches, or what they call churches, were used very differently when they were initially constructed. They were power centers and healing centers designed to reverberate frequencies out into the community to help crops grow and people heal. And the areas that they filled in with stained glass were actually the holes. They were open holes designed to, just like holes in a speaker, designed to reverberate the sound and augment it out to a larger population. So, of course, when religious institutions stole all these buildings, manipulated the history, they fill in these speaker holes because they don't really want the true intentions of these buildings to be rediscovered or the magic to be unleashed that they were designed for. So just another layer within that. And then it continues, only the good die young. You got a nice white dress and a party on your confirmation. You got a brand new soul and a cross of gold. So sort of just the surface level programming that they feed to people as they go up through confirmation in the Catholic Church and all these, physical things that we attach ourselves to that really don't have anything to do with the Christic teaching. But Virginia, they didn't give you quite enough information. The obfuscation, the distortion, the mistranslations. You didn't count on me when you were counting on your rosary. Oh, whoa, whoa. So you didn't count on me, as in you weren't actually following the Christic teachings, And they say there's a heaven for those who will wait, and some say it's better, but I say it ain't. I'd rather laugh with the sinners than cry with the saints. The sinners are much more fun. So this is sort of laughing at the idea of inherent sin, sort of just adopting that, well, if you're just going to call everyone who stands against the church, then I'm a sinner. And if that's the case, then Christ, Yeshua was the greatest sinner of all, if by their definition. And I'm being facetious, but that's sort of what the intention of this song is if you're going to call us all sinners, then yeah, I'm the greatest sinner, because I'd rather laugh with the sinners than cry with the saints, those ordained by the church to, whether knowingly or unknowingly, continue to obfuscate the Christic teachings. And say there's a heaven for those who will wait. Some say it's better, but I say an 8. Again, this sort of lofty, distant place or idea of heaven, instead of it's right here, right now. We just have to become worthy of it. And that's the work. Only the good die young. So we have to die in order to reach that state. He said, your mother told you all that I could give you was a reputation. And so this is our sort of parents, our earthly parents giving us this, especially coming up in a society or religion, certainly this whole reputation that we build everything off of. And everything's based on our reputation. Oh, you don't want to be, what will people think of you if you deny the church or go against the grain? And so this is sort of looking at that and how this attachment to reputation only holds us back. It's a false idol. Oh, she never cared for me, but did she ever say a prayer for me? So sort of laying out the hypocrisy within that. And then again, if this is being sung from Christ's perspective, but did she ever say a prayer for me? Because she wasn't. She was only praying for the reputation, the false idol. And then it repeats. Yeah. And he does a lot of the hoo-hoo-hoo, which is like, I see this as kind of a nod to the breath, the sacred connection with the divine within the breath. Only the good die young. So yeah, that's that song. And then going through the River of Dreams. So this song, if you didn't catch it already, is all about meditation and just the river of consciousness, just this river of experience that we're having, and how in the middle of the night we can access it, as in when we meditate, we have a deeper connection with it. It's really continuous. Meditation is a state of just presence. But when we really go within, in the middle of the night, in the deepest, darkest depths of us, we go walking in my sleep, meditating from the mountains of faith. We have to have that mountain of faith to know that is there. And then we go diving deep to a river so deep. I must be looking for something sacred I lost. So we're on this perpetual quest to find ourselves. But the river is wide and it's too hard to cross. So the River Jordan, this river that divides between the physical and the metaphysical, the material and immaterial, heaven and earth. And we're here to step in as that bridge. We first have to learn how to cross. That is going within and tapping into this divine source. We have to learn how to cross it. And then the better we become at crossing it, the more of a bridge we can be to help others. Not that we can do it for anybody else. It's important to not establish ourselves as if people can walk on ourselves. We don't need to be anybody's saviors, and we can't be that. Trying to put ourselves as a savior just is a formula for creating a new religion. And that's exactly against the Christic teachings. So we're not here to create a new religion, be a savior, but by us being that bridge, we can shine as that example to show others, hey, here's what worked for me. Now you try. But so at the beginning of the song, but the river is wide and it's too hard to cross. As we're learning this process and we're starting in our meditations, it's very challenging to cross that river, but we keep coming back. And that's what he sings. Even though I know the river is wide, I walk down every evening and I stand on the shore and try to cross to the opposite side so I can finally find out what I've been looking for, which is you. But we never stop searching. And it's through this continuous search that leads to an unending, expansive process. So I can finally find out what I've been looking for. In the middle of the night, I go walking in my sleep through the valley of fear to a river so deep. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil. And I've been searching for something taken out of my soul, something I would never lose, something somebody stole, which we don't have anybody else to blame. We did it. But it's essential that we go through this process of forgetting who we are so that we can remember again. It's that contrast that allows this whole experience to exist. This perception of separation, stepping down in conscious awareness so that I can see from a various vantage point and forget that I did all of this. What a process. So it does feel, but it does feel like something taken out of my soul, something I would never lose, something somebody stole. This piece of us that we feel is missing. And as we go along, we realize that there is nothing missing. It's just simply I forgot that it's there and I forgot who I am. But that's very challenging to maintain and arguably impossible to maintain completely, because if we do, then we dissolve back into the ether of consciousness. We become one with all. And that's fine. I'm sure each of these individualized aspects of consciousness can go through a process like that whenever we're ready. However, the fun and joy of this experience is to pretend that we're not. So we do. I don't know why I go walking at night, but now I'm tired and I don't want to walk anymore. I hope it doesn't take the rest of my life until I find out what it is that I've been looking for. This quest I am on. So in the middle of the night, continues through the jungle of doubt to a river so deep. And I'm searching for something so undefined that it can only be seen by the eyes of the blind. That's a powerful line right there. Something so undefined. God goodness is beyond definition. And as soon as we try and define God goodness, that's where we get into trouble. That's where religions are created. No matter how well-intentioned somebody is when they start doing that, if you start trying to define God, goodness, instead of just be it, worship that which you are. Don't worship some idea. Don't worship some definition. Worship goodness itself. And we all know what it is without defining it. And as soon as we do define it, it leaves room for manipulation, control. It leaves room for attachment and pride and all of these things that cause all sorts of issues. So it's something so undefined that it can only be seen by the eyes of the blind. So it is unmanifest, immaterial, non-physical. Our physical eyes do not see it. Only the eye, the one eye, can see. I'm not sure about a life after this. God knows I've never been a spiritual man. So sort of denying or contrasting the religious perspective of life after this is it. This experience is perpetual, it's continuous. Baptized by the fire. The baptism of fire is the Christic baptism. So once we have stepped in, embodied the Christ, then we're able to wade into the river that runs to the promised land to reach the other side. And then to stand in the middle, to be able to go back and forth. That's the highest achievement, is to walk with one foot on each side, so we can be a bridge to bring in more of the unmanifest into the physical. And what a process it is. What a challenge, but what a beautiful, beautiful experience. So then it repeats in the middle of the night. I go walking in my sleep through the desert of truth to the river so deep. We all end in the ocean. We all start in the streams. So just acknowledging the process of us moving and our river deepening as we learn to cross the stream where it might be easier. Well, that just means the river is going to grow wider and deeper. So it's going to become more challenging to cross, which means we have a greater responsibility with great and more power. With great power comes great responsibility. So there's so much packed into this song. So I wanted to share that one. And yeah, that's The River of Dreams by Billy Joel. Hold on just a second. I'm going to turn the heat off. Yeah, so welcome to another quest I on. The quest to illuminate the single eye, the quest I'm on this, where are we at? Thursday, April 3rd, 2025, as some call it. And I'm very excited to get into another conversation today. And the conversations on these shows, if you're unfamiliar, can take us wherever they lead. This show is all topics are completely open and welcome. All questions are welcome. So if at any point you have a question or you want to share on a topic that's being discussed or bring in a new topic, share an experience that you've had recently, feel free to jump in. So just to start us off with some announcements here, just wanted to, continually remind everyone that there are quite a few efforts of help and support that I'm involved with. And so I just wanted to continue to list those. So you're probably aware that I'm in continuous contact with a man in Uganda who helps to run an orphanage called the Lions of Uganda Children's Ministry. And they are, they're always doing their best. He's an incredible man of faith. And he's always sending me pictures and videos and posting them in JC Family at times as well of the children and how happy and joyful they are to receive whatever it is they receive. You might remember back in the winter or the beginning or late fall or somewhere around November or so, I think, where they were out of bedding and blankets. They didn't have enough for all the children to get, and it was getting colder. Of course, it's in Uganda, so it's not necessarily cold, but at night it got chilly, and some of the children were getting sick because they didn't have bedding or blankets. So with your gracious help, we were able to pitch in and get them enough to get blankets and mattresses for all the children to have that are living there. So thank you for that. But it's a continuous process of, they're always in need of food and support. And I have asked Bali if he can reach out to others in other groups and spaces so that there's not so much pressure on this group. And he is working on that. He's trying to. He says it's very difficult for people to give into that and to help out in that area. He says he wish people could just come visit and see what he's been doing and what they're up to. And I certainly have that on my list to do whenever that abundance and travel is much easier comes into my space. I would like to go visit and see and just spend time with them. I know that would be wonderful. But all to say is that support is continuous, and any which way that you can help with that is very, very much appreciated. I've been dipping into my personal funds to help them out as best I can, but I can only do so much. So if you do want to help out with that in any which way, I have set up a Gifts and Go that you can help support. So it's giftsandgo.com/Lions of Uganda. So that's always appreciated. And then if you just want to send through me, the Gifts and Go comes through me as well. But if you want to send through any other means, you can find all of my contribution links here on my website, justincarpenter.org/contribute. And that's very appreciated as well. Just note that I am 100% donation supported to do all that I do. I'm looking into finding other ways to, manifest abundance. Darth and I have been discussing ways that we can pour our intention into manifesting abundance so that we can help support more, because we'd really love to do so much more for others, including all of you. I know so many are out there just doing the best you can to get by in the ways that you are. So I'm not asking anybody to put themselves in stress or financial hardship, but just any which way that we can chip in to help out is certainly appreciated. Yeah, as we sort of go through this, and I do have great hope that no matter how much longer this layer of this story goes on, where we're living in this society designed to entrap and enslave us and take everything away from us, I am seeing great movement in the things that Trump is doing in the public space, that for at least the meantime of however long this lasts, I do think it's going to grow more and more comfortable to where we'll be able to sustain ourselves much easily. Of course, it might take some time to kick into effect, but we're seeing great progress there. So I'm very hopeful there. Of course, always very hopeful. I know this is only temporary. So yeah, just wanted to mention that. And then there's also, just to help out with Lila, she has been taking under her wing another orphanage in Uganda as well, which God has a funny way of, bringing both of these groups into our lives from different spaces and different ways. Both of them are very legitimate. I have absolutely no doubt about that. So Sam with the Hands of Hope, is another orphanage that's about 100 miles away from Bali's orphanage, and they're same sort of thing, just doing their best to get by. He was struggling without food the past few days, and he takes it upon himself to fast whenever his children don't have food. He said he gives everything to them, and he will take it upon himself to fast, which he says he doesn't mind doing, and he has experience with it, but it's certainly not it's hard to see that. So he reached out because Lila's been pretty stretched thin. She's going through a big move herself as well, and I was able to chip in a little bit there as well. So just putting that out there, if you want to help out with Sam and the Hands of Hope, that's super appreciated. You can either go through me and I can send to Lila and she can pass it along, or you can send directly to Lila and she's helping to facilitate that. So thank you for your help there. And then another group that I've been involved with, and I absolutely love always seeing what they're up to, is the Foxhole Foundation. So if you're unfamiliar, I went down to North Carolina to help out after the hurricane and hooked up with this group, and they have been diligently working in that whole region to help people get homes, get campers as they need to. Jeff and Nadine are just tirelessly working all the time. So many others within that group are just always helping to bring supplies to those who need it, clear debris in spaces that need help with that. So they are committed to helping. So any help that you want to send their direction, feel free to go to foxholefoundation.org, and that's Foxhole with a Q at the first O. So FQXHOLE foundation.org. And you can check out what they're up to. And I do have an exciting update on that with them that I want to put on everyone's radar. This is a ways out, but I did want to say that in September, the second week of September, so right after September 11th, that weekend, we are going to have an event in Pennsylvania, pretty close, like right in between York and Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So on the southern side of Pennsylvania, not too far from Baltimore and Philadelphia. There's going to be an event there at this really beautiful venue that Nadine is helping to put on to help bring more people into awareness around Foxhole. There's been a lot of support as far as getting the venue and getting the supplies and everything needed so that we can keep the costs very minimal. And the idea is just to have a gathering space to spread the word and have an opportunity for us all to meet together for those who are in the area or want to travel. So just wanted to put that on everyone's radar for the second week of September. I will certainly be there, and it should be a fun gathering to go and participate with. And so just wanted to put that out there so everyone keep that in mind. And I will certainly let everyone know when more details are announced around that. But that should be great. So So yeah, I think that's it as far as the announcements today. Thank you all for your patience there. So I think we'll just jump right into the show. And just wanted to offer, if anyone has any questions or things that they want to start us off with, topics or anything that's on your mind, feel free to throw it out there and get us started. Because, yeah, I'll just give a pause. All right. Well, just to let everyone know, I don't have any offline questions received today, so I'll just continue kind of giving some things that are coming up for me recently. So y'all were probably aware from my recent post that I took last week off to go on an extended, or last couple weeks, however long I took off. I don't know. Time is weird. But to do an extended dry fast, and then have a little bit of time to do the refeed afterwards. So that was an amazing experience to go through that, to go through 6 days of no food or water, which was extremely challenging, but very rewarding in so many ways. It definitely helped to kickstart my energy levels and enthusiasm, inspiration in so many different ways. And I'm very excited about what's coming up. Just to give a fun little tidbit, I had a wonderful conversation with Remembrancer the other day, who some of you might remember. I had mentioned the Nazarene 10 Commandments that he had sent me ways back, and I hadn't really been in contact with him for quite a while. So as soon as I mentioned that, I reached out to him and just sent him some love, and we got connected and had a great time connecting in that space. And I told him, he's got a lot of really exciting things that he's been working on. So I told him, whenever you've got something that you want to put out there, he's more than welcome to come on and share it with us. So we might see him in a future show or more, which is exciting. It was really great to connect with him that way. And what else? Yeah, we've seen the whole events happening with Liberation Day and everything being signed by Trump to sort of have the reciprocal tariffs, which I was surprised. And they've got to be weighing everything pretty considerably as far as what these tariffs could look like, because they weren't exactly reciprocal. But it is very eye-opening, and I'm sure for many other people, to see just what percentage of tariffs were being charged on this country for exports, or for imports from us. And so he's sort of shifting that and not charging as much. And I say my perspective on why they haven't been exactly the same is they're probably weighing the collapse, weighing against the collapse of the world's economy. So they know if they push it too much, too fast, it will, I mean, that could really disrupt so many things. And that's sort of what we're seeing with the backlash around the Canada tariffs being sort of vetoed in Congress, if you will. So we'll see what that narrative is all about. But it is interesting to watch, and it's certainly accelerating a lot of things as far as the conversation goes. And that's why I said at the beginning that no matter how much longer this takes, and I am starting, as I've sort of hinted at, I'm feeling like this might take longer than sort of we anticipated. I don't know if we're going to see the big fireworks this year. It might be, but I don't see that happening until at least the fall, and perhaps much longer, because it seems that they're wanting to do a slower rollout. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because as I mentioned, in the meantime, everything's going to get better. So under the quote unquote Biden administration, everything got worse because we were going through the quote unquote storm, and we were experiencing just like what was this shitty reality of letting letting what they had planned go into effect to a sort of neutered way. It wasn't as severe as if it had been completely cabal planned, but we got a taste of it, and it wasn't fun or comfortable. And so we're coming out of that, and we're seeing sort of a righteous restoration of leadership in a way. Of course, it's not as much as we all know could be, but we're getting there. So they're sort of warming up the populace, and they're continuing to wake people up. I mean, the conversations I'm having with people, my old contacts and old friends and things, is very encouraging to know that this is working. Family and friends, topics that I years ago wouldn't have been able to breach, people are starting to come to terms with it, whether it's health related or political structure, power structure, or any of that kind of stuff. People are starting to wake up in their own way, in their own time, and starting with whatever avenue they want to, but it's working. So I'm very encouraged, while of course part of my impatience can come through, and I'm like, well, why can't this happen now? When I really sit with that, I see the reasons, and I see how that's shifting, and I see people's perspectives moving in that direction. So they're not doing this for the good of a small group. They're not doing it for just the truthers or the Q followers. They're doing this for the good of humanity and the good of the whole. So the more people that we can get on board, especially prior to a big jolting finale, the better, because that's going to set us up for a better and smoother transition through all of this. And that's what that's been about, to reduce the casualties as much as possible so that more people can make it through this, so more of our family and friends and loved ones can make it through. Hey, Cheryl, welcome. Did you want to say something or ask something?
Sorry, that just happened by accident. No, I'm just out here pulling weeds, listening to your delightful voice. So, nothing on my mind right now, but sorry about that. Thanks.
Oh, no worries. No worries at all. Well, it's good to hear from you, and thanks for being here. Yeah, your mic is, oh, there you go. Yeah, Nancy, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, thank you, Justin. I'm driving, so it won't be long, but on the topic of, people waking up, yesterday I was on the plane, and before we took off, the pilot says power down, all the stuff, and, keep your Gillette, blah, 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 right? And then he said these words: there should be no electromagnetic transmissions of any kind. Thank you. I just thought that was kind of an odd way of introducing electromagnetic stuff.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good little nod, and it's funny just listening to, I mean, even just listening to like commercials, like people were going all about the KFC commercial recently, and stuff in movies and shows, and conversations from different podcasters who may or may not be involved at a deeper level. Everything is shifting. The conversation is shifting, and as this continues to unfold, and as like Bobby Kennedy, RFK Jr., as that conversation continues, as the poisons slowly start to fade out of what we're consuming, that's going to bring consciousness up to speed. So I can't help but to navigate to these topics and start to bring them forward. So it's oh, go ahead, Nancy. Did you have something else?
Oh, that's all right. I'm going to have to go in just a minute, but I'm noticing that in my children too, just in their world, and the social media, whatever else kind of media they're on, which is not the TV set. So, and I'm.
Oh, you cut off. You were about to say something. Something.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said I don't follow along either, to my detriment, with trends. However, I'm hearing it everywhere, and I'll just leave with one other kind of funny one. It was a Diane Keaton movie with Kathy Bates, and she said these words. I saw it last night. I think it's 2021, maybe 2022 movie. And she said, realize, realize, realize. And I thought for all the Charlie followers, I learned.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great one to reference. I'm not sure who initially coined that phrase, but yeah, I know Charlie brought it into the forefront for most of us, and it's a great one to reference for sure. Yeah.
Well,
So
it sums up what we're doing, and I thank you for this topic, and I'm just going to sit back and listen for the rest of the afternoon as I cannot participate. I have to use my headphones. So thank you all. Love you.
yeah, thanks, Nancy. Thanks for chiming in, and love you too. Yeah. So anyway, it's just very encouraging to see that. So I'd invite anyone who might be finding, might be finding it hard, finding themselves impatient, or, I know a lot of us are struggling financially, but if we can shift our perspective and see the wonder that is happening and see the magic, and even doing that is an energetic practice that will help us to be able to manifest more of that abundance. So that's how manifestation really works. It's all energetics. It's the law of vibration, right? So we have to be, in order to manifest something, manifest abundance, we have to vibrate at that state that it's already happened, which can be kind of challenging, because especially when you're like wanting something, if we're in a state of want, you're putting yourself in a state of lack. So that's not going to vibrate at that state as if it's already happened. But to truly be that and represent that so much that your whole being, your emotions, everything reflects that state. That's the true way to attract what we are, because you have to become that in order to attract it. So a lot of times, and we talked a little bit about this on the Gospel of Thomas reading last night, which, if you haven't listened to any of those, Darth has said that's probably his new favorite book. And it's not even really, a book. It's 114 passages. It's not very long, but there's so much depth to it that we're only halfway through it, and we've done 4 2-hour-long episodes. So there's so much there. But anyway, what we talked about was the difference between being an inside out versus an outside in. Where's your reference? Society trains us to be an outside in, that when I get this, or when I have this, then I'll be happy. When I reach this status, or this whatever, have these things, then I'll be satisfied. But that's the opposite of how creation works. It's an inside-out reality. So we have to embody that abundance. We have to embody that state of joy and happiness and contentment. And it doesn't mean that we do that in a way that where we spiritually bypass what's happening all around us. It can get tricky, right? It's a balance. But to know that whatever is perfect, and if I can shift out of those states of lack, then creation has no choice but to reflect that. It is reciprocal in that way. So it's funny, we're talking about reciprocal tariffs, and we've been being siphoned off of energetically by this society that has recognized that we are an inside out projector. But if we're told that if we're lied to about that, and we're just told we're worthless sinners or evolved monkeys or whatever, meaningless, then the parasites, that parasitical energy, can tap into and harvest us as long as it wants. and keep us in that state, keep us locked in the matrix. The matrix is a brilliant allegory. So when we unlock that and step into it and say, oh, wow, where I point my attention, my consciousness is so valuable. And even if I don't realize where I'm pointing it, I still am. So if I point it in a way that where I'm intending and not just out there to be siphoned off of, then it becomes a much more creative and constructive, powerful source of creation, which is what you are. And we don't have to sit there and be angry or resentful for Babylon and the constructs of control and all of that. They're there for a purpose. They're there for a purpose to teach us through contrast so that we grow away from that and say, I don't want to play that game any longer. I want to step into this truly and fully and wholly as I am. So yeah, that's all that's kind of on the forefront right now. I'll pass it off again and see if anybody else has anything, any questions have come up or topics they want to jump into. So I'll just give a pause. Oh, here was another one. I was hoping he was going to be on the call today, but maybe he'll listen back so I can send this off to him. So Kari came on to the wonderful show that we had with Robin on the beauty of breath, which a little side note announcement on that. She is going to host a gifted breathing session for anyone who would like to participate on the next new moon. So that'll be September. I just want to get the date right. September 20. No, not September. This month. Where were we? April 27th. So April 27th at 4 p.m. Eastern. She's going to be hosting a breathing session, and we're gonna broadcast that on to my YouTube channel through Zoom, and so that anyone can listen in, and the music will be a little bit better this time that way. So look forward to that. That should be a great way to celebrate the new moon. She did a phenomenal job. I mean, she said she was quite nervous with the show, and it's great to have those experiences and to step off into it. But I think she did a really great job. But anyway, on that show that we did, where we were talking about breathing and sort of relating it to my dry fast experience and all of that, Kari came on and started talking about his relationship with addiction and alcohol, and just how he feels like there's so much energy that he has to expend, and alcohol seems to be one of the only reliefs that he has in order to channel that energy into. So I just wanted to follow up on that. We talked a little bit about, and I shared with him the video that I did on addiction way back, which is great. If you or someone you know is struggling with addiction, that's a great, in my opinion, but a great video to reference, if I do say so myself, because addiction is not something that, from my perspective, is handled very well from the AA perspective, or from even therapy, and oftentimes in therapy and things of that nature, because it's continuing to reinforce this identity that you are an alcoholic and you have this problem, and you are the problem, and you just have to find ways to live with the problem. But it never really looks at the root cause of why we got here, and what is that addiction actually serving. And so I find if we can shift our perspective around the addiction to even a space of gratitude, of thanking whatever the numbing mechanism is for protecting ourselves during those times when we felt like there was no other way. This society is fucked up. It's very traumatizing, very intentionally traumatizing in so many ways. So when we turn to things like alcohol or drugs or porn or shopping or whatever, of course, I'm not suggesting that we just stay there and sit with that. But if we double down on those addictions as if they're the problem, and then we beat ourselves up anytime we do that, and we just reinforce this idea that we had this problem, it doesn't help. So why don't we thank that numbing mechanism for whatever it did and whatever it helped to protect us from, and then go deeper into the root cause of why it's there. Start unraveling these deep-seated traumas that led us to this space, so that we can find forgiveness for ourselves and forgiveness for anyone else who might have brought us into that trauma, betrayed our sense of safety, whether that be our parents or our school or whatever. Forgive, not forget necessarily. We do have to learn from it. It's important that we learn from these things. We're bringing on that state of forgiveness so that we can truly let go. And then that numbing mechanism doesn't have so much of a hold on us. It starts to fade. And even if we have points where we might dip back into it, as long as we're doing it from a more conscious perspective, the risk isn't as great of us slipping back into those patterns of unconsciousness. That's where the real detriment can come from in these addictive things, is when we're just doing it unconsciously. So that was something I wanted to offer to Kari when he brought that forward. And but then also one thing that really came to mind when he was talking about this unending source of energy that he felt like he needed to spend, and the best way that he could do that was to go chat with people, and that often led to drinking in bars and spaces. And it's good to look at that, because there really should be so many more avenues of communication and connection in today's society. But where can you truly find those things in society? You've got churches which feed you a bunch of bullshit in this watered down, inverted version of Christ's teachings. So yeah, you can go to a church and you can find some connection there, but there's an emptiness that's there as well, and a potential for, I'm not saying that all churches are bad and all churches have bad intentions, but they all stem from the same religious construct, that it's like Christ talks about building your house on the solid rock or the sand. Religious institutions are built on the sand. So you're not going to be able to get anything of major substance when it's built on that level of foundation. Now, I do think that some churches will be able to step away from the main religious perspective and have a wonderful space of community, and that probably happens in a lot of ways in a lot of spaces. So that can certainly be transmuted. But my point is that's one of the main avenues that one can find connection, community, but it has so much poison imbued with it. So the more aware we become, those become less and less appealing. So where else? You can go to I think so many things within the AA model are amazing, as far as like providing that space for people to be able to speak about things that maybe they've never been able to, in a group setting with people who are truly, genuinely, or at least they claim to be there to listen. Where else does that happen? Not many spaces. But that, as I mentioned, has so many issues with it as well. You go in and you have to commit to this black spell of, hi, my name is Justin and I'm an alcoholic. So just reinforcing this false identity that you are something that you are truly not. And I get the point of it from their perspective. Like they want there to be acknowledgement of what's happening, because a lot of the, you have to truly acknowledge what's happening in order to transmute it and move through it. But there are ways that you can acknowledge what's happening without this reinforced spell. And that's consistent without. And you're not really welcome if you don't do that, or you don't have a problem to begin with by their standards with some substance. But what about other forms of addiction and other forms of trauma that people are working through? Why aren't there spaces like that for people to be able to speak to? So there's those kind of things. And then there's, what else? And then there's bars, right? You know, everyone's gathered around this centralized thing of drinking poison. And of course you don't have to when you go to a bar, but you're not going to be very popular, or very welcome, especially if there's a large group of people who just want to go visit in a space and nobody's drinking anything, because that's how they make their money. So my point is that there's not really avenues of connection or communication that somebody like Kari or any of us can go to where it's not riddled with other nonsense. And that's why I am so grateful for spaces like these, you know, online potentials where we can gather in this, but there's something so much more magical about being there in person. So we do the best we can with what we have, but it does sort of illuminate a good, as we start to rewrite this version of what we want society to look like moving forward, we can start to bring in more areas and themes around what can we do besides drinking or believing in nonsense or claiming that we have addictions. What can we do besides that to create community? I've seen in certain cities and spaces like board game meeting centers, which are awesome. I think that's a great thing to do. But having other ideas like that, you know, like playing games, sports, and stuff like that can be a great avenue for that as well. If anyone's looking for ideas on that or wants to put something out there, I have used prior to a long time ago, I used a site called meetup.com. That's a great way to find people who might be aligned with some interests and have some things to meet up with. But it's not common. You know, it's harder to make that work. So I'm hopeful that we'll make that shift. And so just wanted to put that out there for somebody like Kari and really all of us to find better avenues that aren't revolving around that, you know, to sort of strip away that layer of the alcohol being a centralized focus. And then in general, or just from a human design perspective, what made me think of is he's likely a generator, either a pure generator or a manifesting generator. And both of those types are energy types, and they sort of have a need of expending their energy throughout the day, especially on their passions. And so it sounds like a big passion of his is communication. So going deeper into human design could really give him some insights, or any of us some insights, into what might be some more constructive ways to channel that energy so it's not done in destructive habits. So of course I love Lila, and she's the best in that area from my perspective, as far as what she knows, and just having awareness of so many other things to tie in with it. But it's I won't say easy, but it's very simple to learn about human design oneself. There are so many great apps and websites and YouTube videos and ways that you can really dive into every layer of your chart to start self-teaching. And so yeah, that would be another suggestion I'd give to him on that topic. So anyway, those were just some things that came up as he was talking the other day that I wanted to share, and I'll make sure to reference that we covered it on today's show. And yeah, I'll just pass it off and see if anyone else wants to jump in with anything. Hey, Injury 50, go ahead.
Hi, Justin. Thanks for that discussion. I guess I have a bit of a follow-on for somebody who might be a teenager and has pre-verbal trauma. If anybody has any thoughts or ideas on how to kind of gap this time until there's better modalities to help these teenagers who are trying to numb themselves with vaping. Nicotine is probably the most popular. Does anybody have any thoughts on natural ways to kind of ease the pain until we can get some different modalities? I'm aware of EMDR and brain spotting, but many of those require, I guess, vulnerability and an eagerness to participate, as well as some verbal ability. And my knowledge is that if some of this stuff happens before the child is verbal, they feel it, but they can't talk about it. So I guess I'm just looking for anybody's suggestions on something natural.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that topic up. I know that's got to be really challenging and hard to witness and see. And so I just want you to know, first and foremost, that we're with you on that one. And I know that your struggles are not alone in sort of finding, and you want the best for them. And society doesn't really offer that. And if it does, it's extremely expensive or hard to get. So some things that came to mind when you were asking for avenues, things, I don't have a child, nor do I have direct experience in working with something like that. However, some things that I would try if I were would perhaps be like aromatherapy. So I know different essential oils can be very stimulating in different ways, and can be very helpful for cognitive function and for stimulating certain areas of the brain. It's not an area that I've done a lot of in-depth exploration or research into, but that might be something to explore more deeply, of just, because that's really simple. If you can find the essential oils that work really well or help out with that, then getting a simple diffuser and having that be consistent is very simple. I know I saw a meme the other day about rosemary, and how just a small sense of that can be so stimulating and cognitively connecting just by taking a whiff of some rosemary. So I've always loved doing that. Whenever I see rosemary growing, I always rub my fingers on some leaves and take a smell of that, because it's just so pleasant. But to see that there's something more behind it was encouraging. So that would be one thing that I would explore. And then perhaps another would be looking into various frequencies that you can find. So this was thanks to Jilly Bean. She referenced this group called Quanta Lab, that they've been making healing frequencies for quite a while. They have a Telegram group, and they broadcast, or they put most of their healing frequencies on SoundCloud. And as far as I can tell, they're all free. Most of them are just like a minute or two long. So they encourage you to loop them on SoundCloud, so you can loop them as long as you want. And looking through their list, they have quite a few things to target. And I haven't done it long enough to notice any substantial changes from doing it, but it was something that while I was on my dry fast, I was like, well, let's throw on some healing frequencies and see what happens, and if anything, just the idea of it is kind of fun. But I do think there's a deeper there's something deeper going on in there. And reading through some of the comments, they have a big group. Let me just find that specific group so that I don't. Yeah, so their group is just Quantalab. So t.me/Quantalab, QUANTA lab. And you can find their group. There's lots of discussion. People ask questions in there all the time and share their experiences with it. And you can search through a lot of their older posts and see descriptions and protocols that they list in there. And then it has a link to their library on SoundCloud as well. So that might be something to try and experiment with and see if you can find some frequencies that might help to move things in the right direction, and ease things in that way. And then another would be to simply recognize what this is bringing you, and in finding peace with what is. You know, as hard as that might be sometimes, and we have these sort of stereotypical ways that we think children should be or operate, and the way that society wants them to operate. And as much as it's hard to witness, and we don't want to see our children go into any self-destructive practices, trusting the movement within there and how that unfolds, and sort of just finding more of a space of allowance within that, to allow, of course, within reason, we're here to protect, but also to allow it to unfold, and maybe they'll teach you something. Maybe they'll help you to find a deeper sense of peace and surrender into what's happening, instead of, if we find ourselves in that state of worry, that can be very harmful both to us and to anyone within our energetic field, because we're emitting that state of worry. And so that's only going to be contributing to things. And those who have sort of what we'd call cognitive impairments in certain ways are often much stronger in other ways. And that's why it's been told to us that a lot of the people that are deep within the high intelligence of things like Space Force and, involved with the Q team, many of them are considered by societal standards to be autistic, but they have such a greater depth of awareness and ability when it comes to certain things. So, maybe just shifting the perspective around what we might find as a detriment, and seeing it more as a gift at times. And I'm sure you know that to some degree, but just the invitation to put out there. Go ahead.
Yeah, so appreciate that, because there is a balance between accepting it and worrying about it. And, unfortunately, his older brother went through the same thing and overdosed and died. And so the balance is very tricky to make sure this doesn't happen again. So I'm just looking for ways to, I guess, help ease that pain, dull that pain the most naturally and unharmfully at this point, till we get to a point where there are the modalities to help. And that the behaviors of doing other things don't get them kicked off the sports teams that they so desperately need to stay on, and get suspended from school. And, just, we're not at the point now where careers aren't important and jobs aren't important and all that yet. So there's like this time frame that I feel like I have to get through. I'm just looking for kind of the safest advice to help him cope until we're in a place where either the help is there or it doesn't matter as much if these people are doing what they're doing. So I've become very tolerant of what he needs. It's just like I want to help him find the healthiest way to cope with it. And so that's what I'm just looking for, is like any suggestions. And I like the music one because, you know, it's easy to do. The essential oils I've been using for years haven't found a good formula, and they're just more cumbersome for a teenage boy who doesn't want to smell like anything and doesn't have time to sit at a diffuser. And so like supplements I was looking for to see if there was something, or I love the music thing. The frequency thing would be great because it's so easy to do and it doesn't take a lot of time, and they can do it so easily on their phones. So that's very helpful. I'll look into the quantum lab, the Quanta Lab one. But that's what I was looking for, is just, you know, are there any like natural supplements? I mean, I know that dulling one sense dulls a lot of senses. So that's what I want to be careful about, because I want to dull the pain, but I don't want to dull the joy for him.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for expanding on that. So some other suggestions that came to mind were, I haven't done extensive experimenting with this herb, but I know people have used ashwagandha, and
Yep.
that might be something to, you know, make tea from, or what supplements, like capsule form or something that might help to shift some things potentially. And then there's also, I don't particularly, you know, it's like you said, finding things that are going to be less harmful. So I don't know how much you've looked into things like CBD is going to be much less psychoactive than a full strength cannabis. But tapping into that plant could be very effective to helping him. And then you would just have to find the right dosage and right amounts to where it's not impairing him in other ways, but potentially stabilizing within moods or things that he's yearning for otherwise. So that could be something to explore further. And then, yeah. And if I were going to go that route, if it's going to be the full strength cannabis, you can look into something like Rick Simpson oil, which is the ultra concentrate straight from the plant, and finding just the lowest dose possible to where he's not really feeling anything, but it could triggers, could bring some balance into him. So that would be something that I might explore. And then another one that I've only recently, it's kind of been a buzz on, and I actually got some just because I like experimenting with things before I really suggest it. So just note that I haven't really experimented with it. But there was a buzz around RFK Jr. using the methylene blue, and that being potentially very beneficial for mitochondrial stimulation and mood stabilizing and cognitive function and lots of other things. So that might be something to research further and just see what that can do. From what I see, you can find some that, you know, you do have to be concerned with the quality that you're getting, because oftentimes it's prescribed, but you can't find it otherwise, and you know, from reputable sites and things of that nature. And that might be something to explore as well and see if that helps in any way, because from what I've seen, I haven't found any adverse effects from it. I haven't seen anybody that's like had a big problem with it. So that could be something to experiment and try. And then from that, well, not from that, but similar would be, you could look into something like ivermectin as a way to, because this could be this could be parasite related, as far as they're very much connected to our nervous system and things in that nature. So if depending on what his diet is and what he's consuming, and it could be something related to that. So going on an ivermectin protocol for a time to see if things balanced out could be quite helpful as well. So yeah, those would be some more suggestions to give there. So yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, thanks. I'll look into them. Some of the things that I'm balancing, there is a teenager who's being drug tested because they're on a sports team and not knowing what's going to show up through some of these substances. So I'll have to look into that. And then just the whole concern I had as far as, brain development and the dopamine receptors and what I might be doing to continue to increase dopamine receptors unnaturally and in the wrong way if I'm supplementing with some of these things. So there's a lot to know. And also just a teenager who after one shot may not trust another shot at trying something different. So I'm just trying to get to the kind of the most effective ones to try first so that I can gain his trust. Because again, this is a teenager who went through trauma, and trust is a big issue, for teenagers that have gone through trauma as infants. So I appreciate that. And I will look into some of these for sure.
Go ahead, Darth.
Hey, so I've been listening, and I just want you to know that I'm wishing you the very best in your circumstances you're going through, and I want you to feel confident that you're going to have a positive resolution to the situation. The one thing that I would recommend is something called AAT. It's Animal Assisted Therapy. Working with animals is something that can be really beneficial for children, especially children that have suffered through therapy or suffered through some sort of trauma and they need therapy. Because animals themselves are pre-verbal themselves. Animals don't talk, so they're really good at healing that sort of pre-verbal trauma. Just being around an animal can release oxytocin. It can strengthen the senses. Animals are generally can when they know when they're around someone that's hurt. The animals themselves can release like a calming presence. Animals don't have animals practice non-judgment. So a teenager that's been traumatized isn't going to experience judgment from an animal. And then there's all kinds of benefits, even if you're not able to afford an animal yourself at this time. If you live anywhere near any sort of town or city, there's going to be tons of volunteer organizations that are desperate for volunteers that need help with their animals. So it would be really easy for you to find acceptance in one of these organizations. And then your child would be able to bring goodness into their own life because they would be doing something good themselves. And as your child experiences doing good for these animals, your child would feel empowered because he's making a difference that he can see with his own eyes or her own eyes. So there's all kinds of benefits to working toward animals. I myself, I have a bunch of animals. And I mostly do that for the sake of my children because it's good for my kids to grow up around those animals. And so that's just one thing. And then there's also, besides just volunteering, there'll be actual groups that actually specialize in animal assisted therapy. And I don't know what your insurance situation is, but there should be programs to assist with that.
Thank you. I really appreciate that information.
Yeah, thanks, Darth. Sarah, did you want to jump in?
Yes, please. Hi. I'm really feeling with is it Indra who is speaking about your son? I believe it's your son. Anyway, I just want to share that I really agree with what Darth just suggested around animal therapy. And at a certain point in time when my son was around 14, and he had gone through trauma, and actually I was unaware of what he had been through, but I did receive the message around how having a dog in his life would be a good thing, and I didn't act on it, and to be true, it is a real regret that I did not act on that. And in my life right now, I'm with a lot of people who have a dog, and we're going in nature and with these dogs, and I can honestly say I personally am receiving so much therapy and so much elevation from being with good people and a dog in the woods. It's just like the best, uplifting, most beautiful experience, and I highly recommend it. And I couldn't help but feel when you were speaking, you're mentioning a lot about the sports, and I don't know which sport this child is in, but my sense is, or what I would invite you to do is just check in about the pressure there is to be in the sport, because sometimes we can apply our own attachments to our own life and what a sport might have been. Like for me, gymnastics was just incredible, and for my when I was a young woman, it was so good for me and so amazing. And I developed a lot of friendships through that sport, and just like I still have I'm 60 years old and I still have incredible flexibility, I know, connected to all of that training. But sometimes we can take our experience and put it on our kids, and sometimes there can be great expectations and great pressure in these team sports, whether it's basketball or whatever. And they can be lifesavers and wonderful, but sometimes kids aren't speaking up about the pressure they're receiving. And I would really, really look into who is the coach of these teams. Like, are they invested in, are they good people? Are they invested in spiritual development too? That might sound really, really odd and strange for some people, but I think that there can be awfully like amazing good leaders in sports, but there can be some really horrific people, and some kids do not feel free to speak up about it. And unless parents are tuning in to whether that man or woman is a healthy being to be leading kids, I just think there's a lot of pressure on kids. So if that resonates at all with you, apply it. If it doesn't, please just let it go. But I couldn't help but wonder about that as you were speaking. And thank you, Justin, for having this discussion today. Thanks.
Yeah, so thanks about the information about the coaches. Yeah, we've as parents have been letting him take the lead, and there's been a couple sports that he has disengaged from because of the coaches and the pressure. And so that's a very, very good point. And so we're very open to him leading how much he wants to be involved in what sports. I mean, he gains a lot of self-esteem, and I think it's good for, the good hormone releases and the good chemical releases that he gets from exercise. But I think that's a really good point to not let that pressure be something that contributes to, wanting to dull the pain as well.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah, for the suggestion. And yeah, as far as some other things there, I just wanted to relay from JC Family. So Angela Gipple suggested, would he be open to any of the healing arts? So Jinshin Jitsu, acupuncture, Reiki, etc. So there are lots of modalities if he's open to that kind of stuff. If you could find somebody that maybe he enjoyed working with, or if he wanted to Jitsu, he can do himself to bring that in. And then Roseanne also suggested tapping. So there's a great app called Tapping Solution that he could, have on his phone, and it can walk him through various forms of tapping, which if you're unfamiliar, tapping is just simply taking and, you're just very lightly tapping different areas, and that activates different meridians and energetic pathways to help move things so there's no stagnation within that. So that can be very helpful. So just wanted to throw some other suggestions out there if any of those resonate with you.
Thank you. I know of most of those. So again, some of these kids don't like to be touched. So some of the those modalities don't work. But I did read about tapping last night, so I do have a video on that. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anyone else have anything to suggest or on that topic? Yeah, Sarah, did you have something else?
Sure. This isn't necessarily a suggestion. It's just, yeah, I just wanted to say that another thing that I'm very aware of that is necessary for teenagers, especially teenage boys, is some sort of initiation. And it's not done in our culture. It's and so I think this is why so many kids at this age end up maybe getting in trouble, like either falling into addiction of some sort or whatever, is because there is a need for a great initiation or challenge. And sometimes, yes, sports can be a way for energy to be directed that kind of is similar to an initiation. But what I'm speaking of is actually what the African people led their young people through, and I'm going to say especially men, boys, extreme initiation processes. And I've been experienced part of this as an adult, not as a teenager. I was only introduced to these. They're considered rituals as an adult, and it was through Malidoma Somé, who's no longer living, and the Dagara tradition. But I'll give an example of one of the rituals is where a basic, very deep hole would be dug, and this is what Malidoma Somé experienced in his culture as a young man, and all the young men had to go through this. And this is just one example. And you're buried, not your head. Every part of you is buried except for your head. And there's a ceremonial fire that is lit and kept going, and there's ancestral healing energy that is present. And what is requested is that anything that is not belonging and in alignment with spirit be given back to the earth, Mother Earth. Well, actually, they don't really call it Mother Earth. They have a feminine and a masculine earth. And anyway, and the individual is staying under the earth and releasing until it's complete. And anyways, like I experienced this healing, and it was for me unbelievable how potent this was. And anyway, I just want, this might be way out there for some of the people listening, or maybe not, or maybe it's going to incite some remembering for people of something they already know. But I'll just say, Malidoma Somé would basically say, like, it is so important for young people to go through an initiation, and so important to have very strong guidance at this age, because there is so much in our society that's going to pull them this way and that way and this way and that way. And it's so confusing with the hormones that are rising up, and the sometimes Kundalini awakening that is so misunderstood. And there's no, like, most doctors have no clue about that. Don't even, wouldn't even hear about that. But with medicine, with people with earth medicine, earth healing medicine, it is just known there must be initiation. And we're, as a society, very disconnected from these things. But all I know is I was very called to engage in this and to study it, and I feel very gifted by everything that I've received. And there isn't a day that goes by that I'm not using or incorporating some of what I've learned through these practices. And anyways, I'll just say, if it's way out there, just remain open around this, and see what comes to you around wisdom around these practices. And I mean, even simple things we remember as kids, maybe at a beach, the great potency of just burying each other in the sand, that weight of the sand, and how healing that felt, to have the weight of Mother Earth on you. And I mean, it's a very playful thing, but there's can be a very big healing that goes on there, especially when there's intention and safety created for these things. Anyways, the man's name who's written many of these books is Malidoma Somé, Some, with an accent aigu. And a lot of these things are explained in his, I think he wrote about 4 or 5 books that are available that share these ideas. And there's still people. There's a group of people in New England somewhere. I don't know exactly. I'm not sure if it's somewhere in upstate New York or where, but there are people who carry on these traditions and do a lot of this African work. And I feel it's very important for teenagers, and we just have to do our best because it wasn't something that I grew up with, really. It very, very foreign, but it's something that feels very right for me. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Sarah. We're actually heading to Florida in a couple weeks, so maybe we'll pack a shovel and do that on the Silica beaches of Florida. Sounds wonderful.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and just to have fun doing that together is always a great memory. But thank you, Sarah, so much for speaking on all of that, and I agree wholeheartedly. I'm just so grateful that you brought it up. Darth has said he can't speak right now. He's driving, but he was very much in agreement with everything that you said. So he phrased it as paramilitary initiations. So to have, he suggested maybe even if you have like a veteran who you trust to maybe act as like a mentor or guide, perhaps, that they could hang out together and have some influence that way if something comes to mind. But yeah, Sarah, to what you were speaking in regards to just having that being a part of our coming of age, and especially for men, but for all of us to have something, men are going to be more physically oriented. So having that physical initiation makes a lot of important. It's very important to consider, and so that we can taper this physical power that we have more of, physically oriented, whereas women tend to have more spiritual potential power. And so having an initiation oriented around the various gifts that we bring to the table, so that we're not just blindly or carelessly expending them or pointing them in directions where we're causing harm, but doing this with construction. So to have trusted mentors and guides to walk along and show us that way, and guide through those rituals and experiences, I think is absolutely incredible for us to start to consider and bring back into the space. So I'm sure the teachings of that man that you mentioned, and others who are sort of bringing those old traditions back into spaces, and I think it's very, very useful. So I really appreciate you bringing that forward. I think, I mean, regardless of age, since we are all relatively juvenile in our emotional maturity and spiritual maturity, and of course we're learning that we've had to do most, if not all of that, on our own. I see facilities and programs being created to help us all go through things like that, so that we can have our inner child that never had the opportunity to go through this sort of coming of age ceremony or space to be able to do that. And then that just becoming a regular part of development, coming of age, to where, okay, you're ready now for this stage. You're ready to go through this particular initiation. You're ready to rise up and gain a degree in Freemasonry, or however we want to view it. But I have these pragmatic stepping stones that collectively we can decide on as being the best to do at the time, and of course shift as we need to. But to have some sort of structure in place, we'll make sure that there's no child left behind having to discover all of these things on their own without any guidance from the wisdom. So just really appreciate that. Really appreciate the conversation. So I'll pass it back and see if anyone else wants to jump in.
I just wanted to say also, it's very natural for teenagers, especially boys, to push away and want to cut the apron strings from mama. And it can feel very insulting, especially, when you're really spiritually close with your child. And it can feel devastating, actually. And I would say that for me, as somebody who was a single mom, it would have been very, very healing and wise for me to open and pray for good men to come into my life, to be there also for my son. And I think that actually, when I say that, I realized there were some good men who did come in, who were amazing mentors for my son, Rowan. And I'm very grateful for that, for how they shared their gifts freely and guided my son in ways that there's no way ever I could even pretend to, resemble, because I'm a whole different being. And so, some of the work is for us as a mama to just have faith of good men. There are good men out there who are going to be very much gifted to help these young men. And maybe that is happening right now with the coach of your son's team. Like maybe one of those men is acting in that role currently, which is a real blessing if that's happening. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Go ahead, Andrea.
Yes, Sarah, it's interesting that you mentioned that because my husband and I were just having a discussion. There is a new football coach for his position, and part of us wants to go talk to this football coach and just give him the information about, what makes our son tick and some background so that they don't come on too strong, because these football coaches, sometimes just want to win for the sake of winning. And so we're kind of going back and forth on, would that be useful to the coach, the background information to know kind of the background of our son, who is adopted and lived in an orphanage the first 3 years of his life internationally. And, the pre-verbal trauma that he doesn't even know what happened, most of it, which is just adoption, separation from birth mom. Would that be wise to let that coach in on that information? So that's a discussion that we're having right now. So it's a good point.
May you be guided.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear. Hey, Lila.
Hi, everybody. Just wanted to chime in on this conversation. First of all, thanks for the info as about this author that you shared. Can somebody put a link to that book in the chat for later for me? Because I'm kind of off grid, crazily enough. And I'd like to return to that, being a mom of a 13-year-old son. But there are a few things I wanted to say. One, about the coach, etc. Just because I've worked with a lot of teenagers and pro athletes, and been around traveling with coaches and kids and things like that, and gotten to sort of quietly observe the behavior. While I remain hopeful, I would be, and I'm sure you are, just very, very mindful that right now a lot of the men and women, but men especially, that are in those places, there's a lot of toxicity there, and that would be something to be very mindful, right, of. Really get a feel on these coaches, because my experience has been that there's a lot of two-facedness, and they'll portray themselves in certain ways with their children. I mean, with the parents and the school system, the school, people around, teachers, etc. But then when they're on their own with the young men, there is a really different side that comes out. And of course, this isn't every man. But for me, one thing that's been very helpful is to know, are they Christian? Are they following Christian path? These kinds of things, if you can kind of quietly kind of sneak it into the conversation, sort of get a feel, or look for, I would be more disposed to look for somebody like this for your son that is, from, and I know the church has its issues too, but just in general, I'm finding that there's a little bit more of a clarity and a righteousness to the men that are coming from church group, youth group meetings or that kind of thing. Now, of course, I'm not saying across the board there aren't great coaches, but I've really been in the underbelly of it, and I've seen it, and I've seen them just be one way, and then be traveling for sports with the kids or whatever, and I can't believe how I hear them talk to the kids, calling them names, and then how they talk about women and just all kinds of stuff. I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about. So that would be something of concern. And another thing I wanted to say was thank you so much, Sarah, for bringing up this idea of initiation. And one thing that I think I've seen be very helpful with the teenagers that I know, especially boys, but girls too, because they're, let's just face it, they are working with social media and television, etc. There, it sounds kind of silly, but there's some great shows that are like snowflakes in the wild or things like that. I remember I watched one series with my son, anything where they can watch and sort of be imprinted around things in that way, I think is very helpful for this younger generation to then see, to see these people struggle and then come through it like a boot camp situation, right? And then I noticed that when I'd be doing something hard with my son, I'd be like, remember, this is like that kid from LA that had never done anything. And then, by the end of the boot camp, he was building the cabin or whatever, right? And that ability for them to anchor in that way, I think is quite powerful and something that maybe is missed a little bit. Of course, I think the physical reality has to come in too, because that's so important. But I do think there's sort of this bridge that we can use between the media that is just a part of their life, and that being a beautiful, observable sort of role model way of introducing these things. And then, of course, to be looking at his human design. And I know you messaged me privately and I've gotten back to you now. By the way, if anyone's trying to get in touch with me, I'm in a weird Wi-Fi situation because we're camping now. So if you don't hear right back from me, it's only because I don't have the ability to communicate with you. Okay. So please be patient if it takes a day or two. But, looking at the human design, does he have single definition or split or triple split definition? If it's single definition, is going to be these more like situations where it's maybe one-on-one with somebody else, but often, really the kind of go out into the desert, and spend the night alone or those kinds of things. Those things are so powerful for single definition beings. And trust that, if he is single definition, and I don't even know if you know that, because if he's adopted, do we even know his birth information? We might not. But you can often observe somebody when you know human design well, and there are things that you can make a pretty educated guess at if that's what you have to work with, just so you know. Whereas split definition people, it's going to be more of these group activities where they're going and like building a cabin together or hiking through, right? If somebody is single definition, they're going to push against being put into like an outward bound group with 20 other kids. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily bad for them, but it's not really in alignment from a human design perspective. So that can be really helpful. And I feel like that's where parents with kids, but especially teenage kids, kind of go wrong, because we sort of have these sort of cookie cutter or really generalized ideas of what our teenager or kid in general needs, and then it's pushing up against the human design. Are they single definition? Are they a hermit, right? And then there's the archetype of the 6, which is going to be the role model, which is going to have its own struggles, especially the first 30 years before the Saturn return. And when I hear of a child who has had a really rough reality, seemingly from, outside circumstances, like being orphaned or something like that, oftentimes, not always, but often they are a 6, their role model. And that was by design. Their soul and God decided together that they would be going through that. So, and when we have the ability to see the birth chart, we often find out that indeed they are a role model. So as a parent of a role model, my son is also a role model. That is such a gift to know as a parent, so that you can soften up on seeing your child go through hardship or seeming depression or all of these different things, because the role model is just going to go through it until they're 30. And it doesn't mean that we don't care and we don't try to make things as great as possible, but also it just is a reality. A role model is going to have those struggles. There's also the martyr archetype, which is a 3, and that is going to be the child that does feel martyred, left out, these kinds of things. And those are part of the medicine that they're meant to learn from. So those are just some brief examples, but just wanted to mention that. And the other thing is that hermit energy. If you, just like a single definition, if you push them into a reality where they're, having to shower with people or having to join a team in their single definition, that or a projector that takes energy in so intensely just by being somebody in, another athlete's org field, that can just be, I don't want to say recipe for disaster, but it can alienate them further and make them feel, even weirder and even more out of place and these kinds of things. So just wanted to highlight all of that as, just kind of general ways of looking into it from a human design perspective, but something that can be very powerful. And also, if you look at your own human design, then and how you're acting, say you have the 3 archetype of the martyr, are you going into a place of martyrdom for them? Right. So there's so many different ways to look at the dynamics that can be so helpful, and it changed my life. I mean, I am into human design for the last 14 years because it changed my life in parenting my own child who has a very different design than mine. I was parenting him how I would have wanted to be parented with the design that I have. And it has been so lovely to have the understanding so that I could parent him in the way that really works best with him, and also be mindful of my own way, that my design works in the way that I'm parenting him. So that's why I always say, know thyself, right? Because that internal gnosis of yourself is going to help you be so much more aware of if you are perhaps stepping into, I think, Sarah, you said that it can even be painful when, your child is differentiating and so on. And I think every mother goes through that, but there's certainly places within the designs that it can make it more painful, or we take it more personally, right? And so that can be helpful to understand. So much love to you. We'll definitely have a private conversation, but just felt moved to throw that all in for everybody listening. Thanks.
Thank you, Lila and Indra. I've in both of your message boxes here, I've given the title of one of Malidoma Some's books. One is called Of Water and Healing. Another one is The Healing Wisdom of Africa. But he has other books as well. He also has YouTube videos and that you can access. And like I say, you can reach out to the Dagara, the community that's in New England. And I will also post the title of those books in JC Family. Thank you.
Thank you. And just one more thing, circling back, if we look at attachment parenting and well, we don't like to call it attachment in this realm. We like to call it connection. But if you're familiar with attachment theory, there's also, because he was in the spaces that he was, there's the wisdom, right? And I know this on some level already, but I just want to clarify a little bit more too around if you okay, so because he might not have had those needs of, and also this is in alignment with Steiner teaching, Waldorf teaching, because those needs maybe weren't met, like, infant 2, 3, 4, whenever, you can go back and deal with the sort of suppressed or repressed ways that the body and the spirit and the brain, right, what needed to attach and evolve. Because it couldn't have happened in that way, there's a whole realm. I'll share it when I get a chance. And I'll send it directly to you too. There's a whole chance to go back, and we work with this a lot in rolfing. Say somebody didn't really get the suckle reflex because they weren't breastfed. Well, the rolfing series actually follows the way that we develop the infant developmental theory. So as you're going through rolfing towards the mouth session, which is later, but as you're going through, what can happen is those repressed or suppressed or unmet attachment movements of the body come out, and they weren't met, right? I didn't get to breastfeed, so I have a repressed need for sucking. So I've created an addiction to chewing on ice or drinking out of a bottle, alcohol, like a beer bottle, right? Or sucking on a cigarette. These are all suckle related to the suckling that was meant to happen early on. So sometimes when somebody is going towards the mouth work, and if they have that history, sometimes I'll actually suggest, okay, let's get you a rocker. And this sounds crazy, but let's get you a bottle that fits your mouth well, with a nipple that fits your mouth well. And you drink out of a bottle, warm. Obviously, we might not do cow's milk, but warm almond milk or something like that, and just sit and rock and give yourself the gift of what you did not receive when you needed it. And so a teenager, are they going to do this? Probably not. Right? But we can have that awareness. And I'm saying this for anybody who's listening to this, not just for this teenager that we're speaking about, but think of this in other forms too. So, crawling on the beach and model it, right? Because really years 0 to 7, it's about modeling, and that child, they're basically imitating up until age 7. And so if they can model, okay, like, and especially depending on the human design, you get to the beach and it's like, hey, let's do this, this initiatory thing. If it's in direct conflict with their human design, they're going to push against it. But what if you say, hey, I feel like I want to have rebirth. Will you bury me? And then you come out of it. Oh, I feel like a new person. I feel cleansed by all that silica sand that was on me, right? And then you say, hey, you try it. And then if he's still resistant, okay, let me just do your feet, right? Like, this way of the modeling might be very helpful with this child, because they didn't have it from the caregivers or whoever was going on. I would also recommend looking into Gabor Mate if you haven't. His later work around meeting the needs of the child could be very helpful if you haven't are not familiar with his work. He works with addiction, but actually kind of came full circle and realized it was all in that attachment parenting portion 0 to 7. So how to create that in the later years, there are ways, but that means maybe that he's not allowed to overnight with others. If he does do that, you really keep the attachment of the family intact. So if there's any sports travel or something like that, instead of him staying with the other kids, he stays with the family. These kinds of things where you're really sequestering and keeping your structure very, very held in this moment. And you might not even have this conversation with him, right? But that awareness is there on your part, that you're still working with that 0 to 7 imprinting time, because he didn't get it when he needed it. Thank you.
Thanks, Lila. I really appreciate all that information as well. And yeah, I'm familiar with Gabor Mate. Found him about 4 or 5 years ago, and just the don't let your kids have technology until their emotional needs are met. But it's a really hard thing to meet those needs when they want to push away because they're not comfortable with some of the things that it takes to I guess, get those needs met. So I appreciate all your thank you.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of what I was talking about, is this bridge. We get to get really creative about what we're doing with the bridge with these kids who have had because basically what's happening is they've peer bonded, PEER. I mean, they've pair bonded, PAIR, through peers, and to a lot of these kids, not just him, right? Even my own kid, I deal with this, and I got to breastfeed him, and I got to attachment parent, blah blah blah. There's this whole technological realm that these younger generations are wanting to pair bond by peer bonding, but it's not even with other kids like it was with us during the 70s and 80s. A lot of us, not all of us, I'll speak for myself, but I pair bonded with other kids. I didn't really pair bond with my family because we were free range kids, and our parents were just like, just get out there and do something, right? But now they're pair bonding with the social media, TV, whatever it is, right? And that's where we get to get really creative. And that's why I made the suggestion of let him watch people, these kids that maybe are like him in some ways or that he can relate to, going through hard things, and then model it out in the physical realm, right? Just to kind of acclimate in the way that works for that mind that has already pair bonded with TV, basically, right?
So would you be able to provide links to any of this media? Because oftentimes I will watch some of the movies that are recommended, and I'm afraid to show him some of the stuff that is in some of these movies, because then his mind will go to, well, this is all acceptable and people have tried all this stuff and it's okay for me to try it as well. I'd like to present him with, I guess, more wholesome, virtuous programming. And I'm having a hard time finding that, because like I've watched a lot of these movies and TV shows and I'm like, I just can't show him this. It's too suggestive.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I'll post some things that I've watched with my younger. What I would do is just kind of, scale it back to, even though he's 17, maybe things that are like maybe for a 12-year-old, and then you're not, maybe a movie is too much, but just like a 20-minute segment, and then you kind of get into it or not, and can it be something that's on in the background that you're watching, and then he's like, oh, what's this, right? So you're probably really working with, on some levels, like a 12-year-old mentality, I'm guessing.
Well, that's true from I think a connection relationship perspective. I think that there is a slowness in that development, but yet in a body of a kid who works out every day and looks like he's 21 years old.
Yeah, exactly. I hear you. Exactly. To be continued conversation, but wonderful. And I bet this is going to be really helpful for all of our inner children, our inner teenagers and children that didn't get this. Very enlightening. So thanks for bringing it to the table. It's just so helpful when people have questions like this, where we can really nerd out on it a little bit.
Yeah, I would echo that gratitude. Absolutely. I'm just enjoying every bit of this conversation and where it's taking us, and just imagining the energetically what it's doing to shape this next iteration of our big earthwide community. So just so grateful for the people in the space, and those listening later on, and just anyone who's dedicated to bettering oneself and those around. So just appreciate that. I did want to mention one other resource that I follow them on Instagram, and I haven't been to any events or anything, but they've definitely intrigued me. And if I had more flexibility, and I might attend something. But it's a group called Sacred Sons, and I don't know if they do. I don't know how young of people they do, but it is very much geared to help men step into well, they frame it like helping men to connect with their heart. And so they have real life gatherings, events where I don't know how exactly they're structured, but from some of the videos and things, it seems like very powerful revelatory moments are found through conversation and physical events and things. So just another group to throw out there that seems to have their head in the right direction of facilitating and creating environments like that. So just wanted to mention that. And yeah, I will just pass it back and see if anybody else wants to chime in and either speak on this topic or take us any direction you like. Hey, Beach Girl, go ahead. Just have to hit that same button again to open up your mic, and then you can speak. There you
Hi,
go.
Justin. Hi, Justin. It's Rachel. How are you, honey?
Hey, Rachel.
I,
Good to hear from you.
hi, sweetie. Are you home now, or are you still? Where are you? I can't keep up with you
Home is exactly where I am all the time. So yes, I'm
all the
home.
time. Amen. Amen. Okay. There was a lady on Telegram named Palladian. She's a Palladian 7-7. And I came from a church background, as most of us have, and I'm dealing with the new world coming and raising my vibration and ascending and so forth and so on. And she was on a chat and gave us some incredible information of the Pleiadians helping us to recover our realm, our earth, or what have you. So I had asked her about the med beds, and she had so much information because she's a Pleiadian, but I don't understand all of this, Justin. But she came back. She asked to come back in human form for a while, and that to help the ascension. And so the med beds, she was saying, and I know that's all been going around for years, but so many people are sick, and the elderly, and a lot of people live in their cars, with the chats that I'm on. And so she was saying that we have to be in 5D, and I understand 5D. I understand that that's our new world, but to with all the things that we've all been going through, and the sickness, and the beat up, and we're going into a new world, so we're all positive. But how would we even, like my mom, I'm talking about a lot of people around me, and they want to ascend, but they're very sick and pain. And so I'm not sure if you know that about the 5D, but I don't know. She's saying it, and she's helping with the ascension. So I was a little bit troubled by that. And the information coming out with the Palladium was a little overwhelming for me, coming from where I came from, but I'm open to it. And, and so she named all the star seeds, like 17, 18, I don't know how many star seeds groups there are. And that's, she said in 10 years, you won't even recognize the earth. But I said, well, we want earlier than 10 years. But, she talked about the solar flash and et cetera. So if you can speak on the med bed as far as 5D, and I know, she was saying, turn the TV off. I listen to your chat, and I meditate and I walk, but to get in 5D is what she's saying we have to do right now. I know everybody here is there for the most part, but like my mom and people, they're not in 5D, and my cousins that are very sick, they're not in 5D. Is that maybe she doesn't know everything, but that's what she said. So thank you for listening.
Yeah, thanks for the question, and a lot to unpack there. So I will start by saying that I am very cautious with people who throw a lot of buzzwords out there. Buzzwords like medbeds, 5Ds, Palladians, star seeds, all of that kind of stuff. Because there's merely one consciousness. There's merely one plane of existence, physical plane of existence. And consciousness can exist both materially and immaterially interacting with this space. And if we want to, I prefer simple terminology around angels and because they're merely that. They're angels, they're angels of light. Some people really get into all sorts of different alien races and Pleiadians and Arcturians and all these different things. And I've gone deep down those routes many times before. And every time it always led me back to, this was just another way for this person to speak about themselves from, I know more than, or I'm better than you because I am this or that. So therefore I know this, and therefore you should listen to me, which is the same strategy that religious priests would use to say that I can talk to God, so you better listen to me. You know, I'm not saying that this individual is consciously doing that, but that's the tricky thing. And what we're talking a lot in our discussion on the Gospel of Thomas, but in general, Christ's teachings was constantly admonishing his disciples for talking of things that lead in the direction of creating religions. So advertising oneself as being a Pleiadian, and I know this because I'm dealing with ascension and all of that, on some levels is true, but it also creates this hierarchy. It creates this separation. And anytime this separation is defined and categorized and hierarchy established in that way, that leads for room for corruption and control. Whether it started out with that intention or not, it doesn't really matter. That's the recipe that leads to that space. And that's why Christ was so diligent in saying, no, we're not defining this. We're not creating definitions around who's this or who's that, or defining God, goodness itself. You are that. So if we want to imagine these, we are light manifest physically. Simply put, we are light manifest physically, light vibrating at a certain oscillation where it has the appearance of physicality. It gives this whole beautiful structure of experience to exist and experience with. It's all light, and we all stem from that same source light. So if I want to imagine that light distinguished in various, alien groups or beings of different, far off different spaces, and I can imagine that. But the further I sort of deviate from what actually is, the more confusion I'm bringing upon myself. And the more that I sort of push those ideas, the more confusion I'm spreading to others. And that's leading to more discord and less harmony. We work much better together in harmony, collectively sort of oscillating at a similar frequency. And if we're out there distinguishing ourselves as all these different alien races from far off distant planets, that's not really aligned with how this physical creation is made up, then that's only going to take me further away from that which is. So I personally don't participate with any sort of narratives around people who distinguish and put themselves out there in that kind of way. Because time and time and again, I've seen that to just be a disguise for someone's ego, to whether they had good intentions or not to begin with, it's a disguise to say, I'm better than you. Because I believe this, I'm better than you, and therefore I get to say what it is, and you don't know because you're lesser than, or I'm this ascended master reincarnated, or this was my past life and that's how I came to be. And you see how there are many flavors to disguise the same sort of thing of creating that hierarchy, creating that sort of elitist perspective. And again, I'm not saying that the intention was with malice or anything of that like most people do so very ignorantly, but that recipe leads to that perspective. So first and foremost, I just want to urge caution in working with that kind of thing. And we've spoken about this before, and I love you, Rachel, but you love to wander off into these spaces where these people like to speak about all these different things. And then periodically you'll come back here with a whole bunch of confusion and all sorts of different ways that's all over the place. And then you often wonder why you get there, why you might feel this layer of confusion, or why this doesn't, make a lot of sense. And just simply put it because it doesn't. So what does make sense is that you are light manifest. You are no separate from any other being in any time, space. It doesn't matter. And we're here to step into our fullest and highest self. That's all this quote unquote ascension really is. It's just remembering who you truly are. You're not going anywhere. We're not changing. Where you can view it from a sense of evolution. We're evolving, but we're really not even doing that. We're just returning back to who we truly are. And that's all this. If we're going to have any sort of way to pragmatically distinguish between where people are, it's just varying levels of remembrance. So those who have forgotten the deepest, and we've all forgotten very deeply, are going to go through, the creation is going to reflect back to them the necessary stimulation, the necessary catalyst to get them to snap out of that layer of forgetfulness eventually. But death is not considered really as like a ending point. Death is simply a result of continuous staying or stubbornness in forgetfulness, whereas creation is trying to evoke us out of that. So those who, and that's where I don't even really like the terms like 5D and all of that too, because usually that's just another language that's used to develop this hierarchy and this sort of elitist perspective. So to your question around, the concerns around people not making it through or they have to step into 5D in order to experience medbeds or anything in that capacity. On one hand, that's how it's always been. And I say that in the sense that if we never learn to stop poisoning ourselves, then we're going to poison ourselves to death. If we continue to take this, if I continue to take this hammer and smash it into my hand, well, my hand's going to get hurt. I'm going to break it eventually. So this is a very cause and effect creation. It's seemingly brutal in that sense, but only when we throw emotion into it. It's not emotional. It's not making decisions. It just simply cause and effect. So if we reflect that energy back to creation, that we're not ready to move on past a certain level of incarnation, then we will stay at that state and we will reincarnate at that level and we'll stay there, and that's okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. But eventually everyone always moves through the stages. And it's not even really stages, because again, I don't want to create that hierarchy or that one is better than the other. It just simply is. Just in the same way that consciousness is experiencing itself through the eyes of a sparrow, getting to have this way of flying around and enjoying creation from that perspective. But it's not really consciously philosophizing or unraveling or experiencing the same depth of love that we might. It's a different vantage point. And so even within a species, the human species, we have varied vantage points that we see creation through. And that's all very purposeful. Because if you could really even say the point of this experience is to see ourselves from infinite number of views, infinite number of vantage points. And that's only possible if every single one of those vantage points is actually played out. So we need people to experience the vantage points of the most ignorant and the most forgetful. We need people to elevate themselves past that point to see it from a higher point of view. We need people to, and I'm not saying that we need to force people to stay anywhere at any level, but it just to be at peace with the balance that everything provides. Everything is exactly as it needs to be. Now, if I start to have these expectations or these ideas that creation needs to be some other way just because my mind has made something up, well, then that's a separation, that's a schism within myself. And I'm only going to continue to suffer the longer that I hold on to these things, this idea. So if I can let that go and be at peace with it as exactly as it is, trust that everyone is where they need to be, trust that if I step into myself and live the brightest and most beautiful way that I possibly can, then there's no room other than for that way of being to have effect on those around me. But if I instead mentally focus on, oh, I wish these people operated this way, I wish my mom or my loved ones could see this from my perspective. Well, not only is that not going to help them to see it, but it's going to create that suffering within you. So I hope that makes sense. I'll just pause and leave that one there. And again, just urge caution with the avenues that you tend to wander down with people who like to claim all these different things, because it continues to bring you this level of confusion. And so just observing from my perspective and the interactions that we've had, if you'd like to avoid that confusion, then stay away from the confusing spaces. That will always exist. There will always be people making all sorts of wild claims about all sorts of everything, because it breeds this like self-importance and creates that hierarchy and creates that elitist mind, and it draws in people who are like, oh, that person really knows what they're talking about. They're really saying something, because it sounds so strange and fantastical. But that's to put it simply, that's a charlatan. That's somebody who's talking a big game, but doesn't have any substance behind it. So that's why Christ continued to reiterate, you shall know them by their works, by their fruit. You'll know them by their works and how they operate and what they do. So focus on that. What are they doing? Not what they say they're doing or how they're, focus on the fruit itself. What are their actions? So anyway, I'll just leave it there and pass it back to you and see if you have any comments on that.
Thank you, Justin. Yeah, my main concern was like the med bed, because her saying that, I understand that you're not, now that I'm understanding that you don't go there because of the hierarchy, makes sense to me. Yeah, she was bringing a crowd, but I think they sought her to come in and speak. They asked her to come in the chat to speak, and then people came in. So she says a lot of things that you say as far as your teachings. But yeah, I will be careful who I listen to. I mean, I thought I had done that, and I haven't been too much on it. But that was like a special presentation, if you will. But I thank you for your input. And when she said that about the med biz, I was just thinking about my my family that needs it, and they're not in 5D or what have you. But I will heed the caution for sure. Thank you.
Yeah, and just on that note in regards to med beds, and I've mentioned this before, but from what I've gathered and what I've been told is the vast majority, if not all, of what people put out there and claim in regards to med beds are completely made up. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't healing technologies out there that are being used and worked on, and many patents that can be tapped into, and ancient technology that we'll rediscover and put back into implementation. But the buzzword of medbed is often used for just that, as a buzzword to attract listeners and to then sneak in some advertising of like, oh yeah, I sell gold or these supplements or whatever else. And so I'm cautious with people who make bold claims about med beds as well for that reason. But as far as the concerns around people not being able to use certain frequency-based technologies to heal themselves, that's real, in the sense that if our body is not compatible with certain frequencies, the frequencies can be too much too fast. So it's like even something like, and Darth has talked about this before, but even something like a sensory deprivation chamber, which is often what these ancient pyramids were used for. These ways that you could block out all sorts of EMF and anything and go completely sensory deprived. And the energy contained within these spaces is very, very powerful. If someone is not spiritually ready to go, or spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally, all four of them, if they're not ready to go through that portal into that space, it can hurt them and even kill them, because physically they're not in that space to be able to handle that. So the same thing applies with just about anything that's activating in that way. You know, you take a look at plant medicine. If someone is not mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically ready to take a type of plant medicine, and they go too hard, too fast, it can literally burn themselves out to where they're labeled schizophrenic. You know, their mind is lost. With if somebody goes through too heavy of a heavy metal detox, or some type of detox, goes too deep into fasting, it can harm them, potentially kill them. It has. So the same thing operates within any sort of healing technology, including frequency-based technology. If someone is not capable of handling those sort of things, yes, it could very much harm them, and they wouldn't be able to. So I'd imagine as we develop these technologies more and more so, there will be much learning that we do as far as where we draw the lines of what's the barrier of entry. You've got to be this tall to ride this ride, essentially. You know, you've got to be, your body has to be operating, your pathways of elimination, your toxins need to be able to clear out of you fast enough when we turn this machine on. Otherwise, it's going to flood your bloodstream and kill you. I mean, Nikola Tesla, when he developed some of his healing frequency technologies, there were accounts of people who literally like shit themselves when they would hear certain frequencies because it inspired so much detox. And so that's what I believe why he developed some of his ozonated magnesium, which is helpful for clearing out the bowels and preparing somebody for something like that. But say you had somebody who was so constipated that they couldn't do that, and then you had this flood of toxins hit them because this frequency inspired that release, that could be extremely dangerous. So we all have to know where we are, and there's not going to be some just magic thing that solves everyone's problems. There will be pragmatic approaches that people will have to step through, and a level of commitment that somebody has to say, I'm ready to go to this next level. I'd like to let go of the junk food. I'd like to let go of these, and it's not just physical. I'd like to let go of these self-debilitating talks that I have with myself, you know, or whatever. Energetically, I have to align in order to be able to receive this. So it's not something to be taken lightly, and there's not going to be some one-size-fits-all approach to everything. We have to be honest with ourselves about where we are and what we can handle. And caution, I'm sure, will be made to those devices and methods that are more extreme and high risk, high reward kind of thing. You know, there will be great things that can come from those, but there will also be a lot of risk involved. And I'm sure that we will learn the hard way in a lot of instances too. There will be people that will try and heal themselves and harm themselves in greater way. So it's just something that we have to, it's good to be cautious with all of that and not just expect everything. It's not just going to be a switch that gets flipped and all the problems are solved. So yeah, just wanted to mention that too, but thanks for hearing me out. Yeah. Is there, we've got just a little bit more time. Is there anybody else that wants to jump in, share anything, ask a question before we wrap up today?
Hi, everyone. This is Jill.
Hey, Jill.
Hi. I'm gonna go back and listen to. I caught the end of one story, and then I wasn't going to even share today because after what I had heard, I just didn't feel right. So after we shifted, I decided to jump on. So I wanted to share my story about when Robin, um, when the show you had with Robin, I think it was last week, when she took us through some breath work. I had I wasn't on the live, and so when I got home, I was eager to listen to it, and I have this portable sauna that I purchased, which I love. It was the best $200 I ever spent. I love it. When I go in there, sometimes I'll listen to music. Depends what I set my intention on, obviously, or I'll listen to frequencies, but I'm always on my meridians or working on my lymphatic system, just kind of moving around in there, and with such intention because of the time that I'm spending in there. I want it to be effective, obviously. So I turned the show on, and so in saying that, whenever I'm in the sauna, I'm looking at I'm obviously I don't have my clothes on, so I'm always looking at my body because I'm different meridians, and I'm doing like reflexology and things, and so I see my body well, and I'm focusing on my breath when I'm in there as well. But when Robin led us through that, I don't even know how long it was, maybe 20 minutes of that intention of through our crown chakra and our third eye and throat. And it was just, when we were through, when she was all through, which was amazing, by the way. I hope she's listening or she'll listen at some point. I looked down and my arms, like I'm pretty lean, and I clean houses and very active. So like I have really good veins, okay, like in my arms and things. But this was different. It's like, my veins are always showing in my arms and things because pushed to the surface. But I looked down at my legs after that breath work, and it was frightening at first but then I was just like kind of blinked my eyes and looked again. I could see every single vein in my leg, and not like protruding. It was like my skin was transparent. It was like I did such great breathing through that it was just oxygenated my blood, and it was like I could see purple. Like I can't even explain it. That's why I was gonna like share it in the chat, but I can't explain it. And the thing is then I didn't, and then the next two times I went in there after that, it didn't happen again because I wasn't doing exactly what she had led us through, which was so brilliant, and I just loved it. But I'm assuming that that's what is needed to obviously make us healthy and oxygenate our blood. So I wanted to share that because that was really neat. It was really weird, but it was really cool. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And it's that's really, really fascinating and makes total sense. That breathing exercise is designed, and all breathing, when we really get centered into it, helps to oxygenate our blood. And so you being in a more open state in the sauna, blood's going to be flowing more anyway. So then to add the breathing on top of it, and then the sweat would make things slightly more translucent. And yeah, that's powerful. Thank you so much for sharing. It's really cool just to see a direct effect physically from doing something like that. So appreciate that.
Yeah, sure thing. I look forward to her Sunday evening breath work that she has. She's going to be gifting us. That's very exciting.
Yeah, me too. It'll be nice a few weeks away because it'll be on the new moon, but it'll be good to have an opportunity to bring in that new moon together with some good breathing. So yeah, very much looking forward to that. Yeah. Anyone else want to maybe say any closing comments before we wrap up today? All right. Well, I will go over the two songs that we're going to end with. Some more Billy Joel, who is just a lyrical master, and two more songs that I love very much. So here we go. Let's see. Oops. All right. So the two songs we're going to leave with. Sorry, get that right. So the first one, The Longest Time, which is just a catchy, fun song. My parents used to play it a lot, and always a fun one to hear. So just reading through the lyrics, it's a celebration of having that divine connection, having that Kundalini, Kundashakti, that Christ chrism rising, feeling that divine connection within. So, yeah, for the longest time, whoa, for the longest time, if you said goodbye to me tonight, there would still be music left to write. So who's he singing to? If you said goodbye to me, is it that divine inspiration? Is it that connection to God? What else could I do? I'm so inspired by you. That hasn't happened for the longest time. So whether it's the first time that we experience it in this incarnation, or if it's been a minute since we've been able to really tap in, just reflecting on that. Once I thought my innocence was gone, now I know that happiness goes on. So we're much more connected as a child in that innocence. And we thought our innocence goes away as we are told to grow up and all of that. But remembering that happiness goes on, that connection goes on. That's where you found me, when you put your arms around me. I haven't been there in the longest time. So just feeling that embrace of God. I'm that voice you're hearing in the hall, and the greatest miracle of all is how I need you and how you needed me to. That hasn't happened for the longest time. So perhaps this is sung from the Christ or God's perspective at times, and sort of alternating. Maybe this won't last very long, but you feel so right? And I could be wrong. Maybe I've been hoping too hard, but I've gone this far and it's more than I hoped for. Who knows how much farther we'll go on? Maybe I'll be sorry when you're gone. I'll take my chances. I forgot how nice romance is. I haven't been there for the longest time. So the greatest love story ever told, the reconnection of you and God. I had second thoughts at the start. I said to myself, hold on to your heart. Now I know the woman that you are. You're wonderful so far, and it's more than I hoped for. So they leave things in here to leave the sort of surface level romance. And of course, it's so beautiful from that sense as well. But the woman is really that divine inspiration. That's that feminine, right brain, heart-led space. She envelops us. I don't care what consequences it brings when we have that connection. I've been a fool for lesser things. We abandon our desire to maintain our reputation. Nothing matters more than that connection. I want you so bad. I think you ought to know that. I intend to hold you for the longest time. And then it repeats for the longest time, to maintain that. That's the goal. It's difficult to maintain, but the better we get, the longer we can. So that's that song, The Longest Time. And then the next one is going to be Vienna. So note what letter Vienna starts with. So slow down, you crazy child. You're so ambitious for a juvenile. So this is the Christ or God speaking to us. You're so ambitious for a juvenile. But then if you're so smart, so if we're so stuck in our head, lost in thoughts, tell me, why are you still so afraid? If you're so smart, why are you still so afraid? Where's the fire? What's the hurry about? Why are we always rushing around? You'd better cool it off before you burn it out. So cooling is the magnetic cooling, the cooling water. So it's the balance of fire and water. You've got so much to do and only so many hours in a day. Hey. But you know that when the truth is told, that you can get what you want, or you can just get old. You're going to kick off before you even get halfway through. When will you realize Vienna waits for you? So that's why I said note the first letter of Vienna, the V, which is the chalice, the open cup, the womb, V for vagina. That's the feminine essence. So when will you realize that she waits for you? And we can't take heaven by force, so we have to surrender to her so that she guides us. She's the one who leads us there. So when will you realize Vienna waits for you, that she's waiting for you? Slow down, you're doing fine. You can't be everything you want to be before your time, although it's so romantic on the borderline tonight. Too bad, but it's the life you lead. You're so ahead of yourself that you forgot what you need. Though you can see when you're wrong, you can't always see when you're right. You're right. So just more sort of self-examination or introspection around this go reality and all of that, what that entails. You've got your passion, you've got your pride, but don't you know that only fools are satisfied? So don't stay in those foolish, prideful ways. Dream on, but don't imagine they'll all come true. When will you realize Vienna waits for you? Slow down, you crazy child, and take the phone off the hook and disappear for a while. It's all right. You can afford to lose a day or two. So take the phone off the hook. Go within. Sit in stillness. Be in meditation. When will you realize Vienna waits for you? And you know that when the truth is told, that you can get what you want, or you could just get old. You're going to kick off before you even get halfway through. Why don't you realize Vienna waits for you? When will you realize Vienna waits for you? She's waiting for you. That right side, that heart-led space, she's waiting for us. So yeah, that's that song. So I'm just going to play these two as we play out. And as always, thank you for being here today. This is another wonderful show. I hope everyone has a fantastic day wherever you are. And we'll see you next time. So take care, everybody.